is open to us. And when I say us, and I will say it, I keep on saying it, I mean you and me, your family, your parents, your grandparents, your kids, your kids' kids. This is about you. This is not separate. This is about you. And you need to take this seriously. This is about how you can make a better life for your future self. And also, I'm absolutely passionate because it's about me as well. I'm being selfish about it. I want us to all live longer, but also healthier and really critically joyfully. Because if we don't have joy in our hearts, we can live the long life, but it's bloody miserable. We need to have joy and passion. And that really has such a powerful effect on our mental health and our well-being. Okay, so I want to start talking about age demographics and to show at best that they are just lazy, and really actually at worst, they are not only divisive, but they are actually really dangerous to our health and our well-being. And this image sums up the start of my journey. It was all about avoiding age. It was all about absolutely trying to hold on to being youthful, being fearful, the anti-age kind of narrative. But also the thing is, we are all aging. So, you know, this is, again, I'll keep on saying it, is about all of us. So I'm going to start with looking at some of the framework that industry, that advertising, that marketing, that housing developers, architects use, these narrow age demographics. And I want to sort of like just focus on these for a second. So, okay, so let's start off with pensioners. So pensioners are officially people over the age of 65. And here are just some of the negative stereotypes I've come across on my travels over the last couple of years. Okay, so pensioners are all elderly. They're all frail, they're past it, they're old-fashioned, they can't change, and they can't use technology. Now we come to the boomers. These are the groups of human beings who are between 55 and 65, and their stereotypes include they're old. They don't know how to use technology. They don't even want to use technology. They hold all the wealth and they're bloody self-centered. And then this is me. This is my cohort of people. You know, this is us. So these are people between the age of 40 and 55. So just to let you know, I am terribly sarcastic. I'm very cautious. I'm lazy. I'm selfish. I'm impatient, and I am cynical. Millennials, I'm sure there's a few of you on the Zoom tonight. So millennials are Gen Y. You are between 25 and 40. And let me tell you about you. You are also lazy too, just like me. You're also entitled. You get more done on Facebook than at work. You're spoiled and you're disrespectful. You're vain, and you are nurtured and pampered by your parents. Gen Z, people between 11 and 25, anxious, short attention span. This is a snowflake generation. This is my daughter. I feel pretty anxious at times as well. So maybe I am a snowflake. And then the new one, Gen Alpha. So this is the tech, AI, impassioned babies to 11. Okay, so age stereotypes are everywhere, and we are all, and me included, guilty of their reinforcement. But I want to say, really, are we all the same within those age boundaries? And there's some amazing research coming out now, which meta-analysis research, which shows actually the difference between these boundaries is incredibly diverse, while the difference, the difference within these age boundaries is very diverse, but the difference between them is incredibly narrow. And I came across this really amazing quote, just to show how sort of like just mumbo jumbo this stuff is. Andrew Scott and Linda Grattan, in their new book, The New Long Life, say, the danger is that generational labels could be nothing more than a demographic version of astrology. I quite like astrology, but anyway, that's another thing. Using arbitrary dates to form judgments about individual personality and needs. These are really, really quite dangerous. So we need to ask, do they serve us? And my answer is absolutely not. I would say they are really, as I said, lazy at best, but they are really dangerous. These stereotypes are dividing society. they're also actually making us ill. So people who are more negative about getting older live on average 7.5 years less. 7.5 years less. Nothing to do with exercise, nothing to do with diet. This is just purely our belief, our mindset. So if we think about all this negative narrative about getting older, this is really, it is affecting our health and our well-being, our physical health and our mental health. Okay. I also absolutely believe focus on the number of birthdays we've had is crippling innovation. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, and Jackie will talk about this later, I know. There has been billions of money spent on trying to change the whole narrative on aging. Nothing has really moved that much further. We need to think again. We need to think with fresh thinking. When you've met one 81-year-old, you have met one 81-year-old. It's like when you've met one 18-year-old, you met one 18-year-old. But as more people live longer, the diversity of age and aging will become even more obvious. I came across this really Martha Nussbaum, who is a great thinker and an author, and she wrote an essay about aging thoughtfully. And she says the trouble with our current stories of aging is that they don't show the real variety within aging in terms of health and behavior. Again, we are constantly focusing on stereotypes. So what does age mean in a world where we're living longer? Well, the great news is we have more future ahead of us. So with the 100-year life now becoming more of a reality for more of us, I want all of you to start thinking about your 100-year life. It is mind-blowing. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to ring my final bell when I'm 100. I'm 53 now. I've got 47 years still left to live. 47 years. That's an incredible time for me to rethink who I am, what I want to do, change many times, change many careers. We need to think about things in a very different kind of way. I also want you to stop looking back to history for insights. Our future starts now. Only 25% of aging is down to genetics. The rest is to do with our lifestyle and our mindset. So we need to think about that. Now, part of that is rethinking what we think about age. So how old am I? Well, I've told you I'm 53, but that's my chronological age. That equates age with time. But there's also other ways of looking at age. My biological age, well, according to my Fitbit, I'm doing pretty well. So I'm under 53 biologically. Now, but then also there is the sort of like sociological perception of who I am. Some people will think I'm younger than 53, and some people will think I'm older. And there's also my subjective view of an age. When I've done a great fast run, I feel so great, youthful. But coming up to Easter, I am feeling tired, and I can start to use some of those negative stereotypes around aging. I do feel old. Okay, so age is malleable. Age isn't sort of like focused on just the number of years that we've lived. And I really want you to think about that. And thinking about, talking about Patty earlier, when we insist on categorizing people as either young or old, we create falsely conflicting camps for attention and action. So I'm saying is that we don't have to put people into brackets of younger and older. We just have to think and design better across the whole life course. So what else can we use? How can we design better? So I'm going to say it's time to think about stage, not age. The 3-stage life, which most of us, you know, were brought up with, that you have full-time education, followed by full-time work, then followed by full-time retirement, doesn't exist anymore, and it definitely won't exist increasingly over you know, for our kids and our grandkids. But even if we could afford a 30-year retirement, actually all the research is showing it's not good for our health, our physical health, or our mental health. So one of the things I've been very interested in is what do we have in common across the ages? So a couple of years ago, I wanted to find out what unites us across all generations. So I did a big research project of 2,000 people from 18 right through to 99. And I wanted to find out what we had in common. My instinct said there's a lot of stuff that we've got in common, but we needed in the world of research and data that I wanted to find out. I have to say, I was not disappointed. And here are a few little top line statistics. There was no statistical difference in the majority of the ones, and I will tell you where they are. 83% of all ages do not want to be defined by their ages. But going back to what I was saying earlier, nearly every marketing, advertising, housing developer, government campaign is using age as a starting point. We do not want to be defined by our age. We don't see ourselves by our age. 83% of all ages want to mix with people of different ages and different generations. We've got to stop siloing people into sort of like, age communities. 86% of all ages, younger and older, feel that industry and the media stereotype by age. Ageism is endemic across all ages. 88% want things which look good and work well. Just because we're older does not mean we don't care about how things look and whether they're delightful or joyful. And 88% of all ages want age neutral and inclusive options. We don't want age-focused solutions. Okay, so if it's not age, what is it? What is it that we want? 88% of all the people that we tested feel that the focus should not be on age, but on our needs, our values, and our interests. Okay, but what about the physiological challenges of ages? I am under no illusion that there are changes which take place as we age. I want to make that absolutely clear. I can tell you my hearing is definitely not as good as it used to be. And when we used to go out into bars, I would find noisy environments very, very tricky to hear conversations. Also, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. I find small print very, very irritating. I do make a groan when I get off the floor, much the annoyance of my daughter. And I also do forget people's names. I do, and again, annoys my daughter, but it also annoys me. So we tested the 10 common complaints of aging, and we found something profoundly exciting. We found that the young and middle-aged cohort of our study were the ones demanding frictionless experiences. Whilst the older population may well need more frictionless experiences because of physiological changes, we found it was at the young and middle age who were demanding products and services that are accessible, usable, intuitive, natural, and delightful. We found that 1 in 3 people aged 18 to 50 had trouble regularly memorizing newly acquired information. The same amount find it difficult to read small print, just like me. They also struggled to have conversations and hear conversations in noisy places. And they also had trouble with heavy and fiddly sized objects. Design for the margins, the extremes of aging, and you design better for everyone. So I'm saying, let's make sure that design enables all of us. Okay, so what is my message? It really is go out and ask people, real people of all ages, of all backgrounds, to listen what they say, to find out what they really want, what they really need, what they really value, and what they really desire. I find this next slide really, really shocking. So this comes from the McKinsey's Value of Design report a couple of years ago. And they found that 2 out of 5 of the largest companies are still not talking to their customers. And naming no names, I know this to be true. So I've worked with a number of large companies, and I've been shocked that they all design products and services internally without ever speaking to people, real people, about what they need and what they want. And when companies do speak to real people, they often do it through using big data. So they are missing the nuances of really deep listening to real people. And also, I have to say, big data is actually seeped in a multitude of isms. But anyway, that's for another time. So a quote by Joseph Coughlin, the director and founder of the MIT Age Lab. And he says, there is a grandchild's view of old age in industry everywhere. a focus on frailty, an assumption of leisure, not professional, and the presumption that the user is no longer motivated by the prospect of romance or sex. Let me tell you, older people have sex, and they're having a lot of it. So it is not age, but our stage, our values, our needs and desires, which offer the golden opportunity for all of you to innovate. So I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of what I think are age-free. So, but before I want to do that, I just want to sort of like just say that the mega brands out there, the ones which are well known, the ones which are famous, are precisely famous because they are universal. They appeal to all ages. And this is true whether they do it consciously, so people like L'Oreal or Uniqlo, or not consciously, people like Apple, Amazon, and Google. So quickly. So these are Nike trainers. I think these are extraordinary. And no matter what your situation, toddlers in arms, heavy bags in hands, the day after a triathlon when you can't touch your toes, or whether you've got arthritis, these shoes are able to put on and off without you having to bend down at all. Now, interestingly, the innovation came from an insight from a young man who had cerebral palsy, who wanted to have trainers which looked good, but which he could put on. Now, I have to say, they are absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait for them to come out. But designed for delight and for the extreme, and you benefit everyone. Another Nike ad. So this is my age inspiration. So this is Sister Madonna Buddha, who's now in her 80s, late 80s, early 90s, still doing triathlons. So this was in a Nike ad a couple of years ago. Now, the voiceover was a little bit patronizing, but it's still showing different ages, different people following a passion. It was their common interest that was the uniting force. The OXO grip range, designed by the wonderful Patty Moore that we've talked about, a multi-billion-dollar company inspired by a husband of a wife whose arthritis had made cooking difficult. Now, it was very handy that he had a cooking utensils business and he had the intelligence to get in touch with Patty. But what he then did was design, starting off with a lowly potato peeler, design something which worked for everyone, but also looked great. And now he has a multi-billion-pound company. Amazon, whether you love them or hate them, they do come up with some really, really great non-stereotypical items. So the Alexa is now used by people of all ages to help them live more joyfully and more fully. But the important thing to point out here is not designed with disability or impairment in mind. This is not a medicalized solution, just good design which benefits everyone. I'm just going to, and this is from, and I'm just going to end with the Ford focus. I'm just mindful of time. So this is an oldie, but a goodie. So, I mean, you probably all know about this. So this was designed by a team of designers wearing an age suit, which mimic the extremes of aging. It came from an insight from the board who wanted to sell cars to older people. Anyway, because they designed it, they looked at the contrast of the dashboard, the size of the doors, the height of the doors, a number of different kind of things. And then they decided that they would market it to older people. But people don't see themselves as older, so it flopped. But they then started saying, this is a car which is easy to drive. It's enjoyable to drive. It became the world's best-selling car, for almost a decade. And what I love about this story is that Autocar said it is the best family car of all time. So designed for extremes of aging, and you benefit everyone. Okay, so a couple of examples of, just to remind you how bad it is out there. Now, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to show a few screens. Well, actually, I'm going to have to talk about this, the John Lewis ad. So this is a John Lewis ad in 2019. All old people are lonely. This was I hated this ad with a vengeance. It was all based on stereotypes. If you look at the statistics, 35% of people under the age of 30 feel lonely. 20% of people over the age of 80 feel lonely. More people younger who feel lonely. This is across the life course. But the problem is that these stereotypes are phenomenally dangerous. And as I said, with the Rebecca Levy, these stereotypes actually affect our physical and our mental well-being. Okay, so what are we doing at the Common Land? So we've created a sort of like a rich, I'm going to read this because I'm a bit embarrassed. A rich, holistic way of designing for all ages. We call it the age-free, it's a very sexy title, design and research method. It's built on Ron Mace's original universal design principles from 1989, which were phenomenal at the time. But a lot of things have changed since then. So a couple of years ago, working with a number of designers from different industry sectors and the wonderful people from the Helen Hamlin Centre for Design, we looked at how we could update those for modern day. And we looked at three different sort of like different approaches. Yes, usable. Yes, understandable. So these are terms and frames that all of you guys will be using every day. But there's another one we wanted to look at, joyful. This has to be joyful. So our three navigational lenses are physical, cognitive, and emotional. This is about the whole person, our head, our body, and our heart. So we need to think about this from a different kind of perspective. So we've created 10 compass points, and I will share this with you all later so you can have a look at them. But under the three banners, and there's some in there like accessibility, which are absolutely rooted in Ron Mace's work, but there are new ones in there, things like human connection, delight. We tested these again with 2,000 people, and we found that 86% of all ages responded to them really favorably. But only 16% of them felt that they could see these compass points in their day-to-day life. This is a 70% gap that is looking for innovation. 86% of all ages want to see them, but only 16% of people feel that they've been delivered. And then we looked at a number of different industry sectors. So as you can see, no one is doing particularly well. They're clustered around the middle. Books are, which is ironic, as one of the oldest communication devices, is like by far the winner. But if you look at that bottom right hand corner, this is where you do not want to be. Public transport, housing, insurance, banking, hospitals and clinics. These are failing people of all ages. So this is one of the tools that we use. So I can't tell you who the client was. So we looked at what the client wants in terms of what they thought was important in terms of the product, and we plotted their shape. Then we spoke to consumers of all ages and found out what they thought was the most important, and they gave us what they thought. And then we said, but what is the actuality of where you are now? So we can then plot their shape. And then when you can start layer these together, you can see what the client thinks, which is the blue shape, and what the reality of the current product or service, the gray box. There's gaps, but look at the opportunity open by designing in a much more holistic way around joy, usability, and things which are easily understood. So what are the outcomes of using our method? Okay, communications, products and services which we can all use and want to use. Places where we can all live and want to live. More connection across the generations, and inclusive, thriving economy. This is good for business. And we all live longer, healthier, and happier. We need to be age-free. Yes, we have challenges as we age, but everyone is different. Design better and you enable all. And I want to leave with focus on people, not age. It's about community, not age. And this is about you. It really is about you. I said I might say that a few times, but it really is about you. Thank you.
Ask later on. But just so interested to learn so many new things there. So thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. If there are questions, just pop them into the chat, and Ronan will be asking the questions after we hear from Jackie. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce Jackie, who is absolutely amazing. She's an independent consultant specializing in independent living design and age-related healthcare innovation. And Jackie is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and has really earned herself with a reputation of being one of the leading visionaries, thinkers and inspirational leaders in age-related landscapes. And when I talked to Jackie for the first time, that is so true. She's a disruptor, and she definitely gave me a couple of call to actions. So I'm so excited to hear from you as well, Jackie.
Oh, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Let me just see if I can share my screen now. Okay, you can see my notes, I guess. Okay. From current slide. Okay, so I thoroughly enjoyed your talk, Georgie. Thoroughly enjoyed your talk, and I just so much of what you said resonated with my experience. But what I want to talk about today, and just to give you a little bit of my background, currently the director of Jackie Marshall-Cyrus and Associates Limited, a small consultancy, and I work with industry. I work across the board, all sectors, with anyone who is looking around for insight in innovation, products and services that they wish to develop. So I provide that sector expertise for them. Former existence as the lead specialist on the assisted innovation platform, living innovation platform with Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency, for 4 years. Prior to that, a nurse educator working at Buckinghamshire University, where I was a module leader for year 2 and year 3 students, nursing students, so nursing education. My last post in the NHS was as the manager of a 60-bedded intermediate care rehabilitation unit. And I have been a registered nurse for 37 years, and I am still currently practicing when I have the time, usually on weekends. And the reason I do that is because during my years with Innovate UK, working, launching national challenges, working with industry, innovators across the board, I realized that there was a huge chasm between innovation, problem identification, and meaningful solutions. So I feel that keeping myself grounded in clinical practice, keeping myself grounded in reality, what is happening in the real lives of people, qualifies me to speak credibly. So today, I want to bring some home truths to you. I want to ground you in some reality, and I want to throw the challenge to you: when is a design revolution going to come? I'll just go on.
Jackie, there's just a comment there. If you do swap displays, just on the top of your screen there, you can have your full presentation.
Swap displays.
Thank you very much for the comment.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Whoever is that? I learn something every day.
Thank you very much, Emer.
Right. So you're seeing it. Yeah, you're seeing the full screen. Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Right. So I want to talk to you about, approach this from the dimension of a social problem, because we seem to have social issues coming out of our ears today. Who doesn't know about Greta? Needs to get out more. Who doesn't know about Black Lives Matter and Breonna Taylor? I kind of have to say you're living under a rock. And I was listening to a well-known speaker sometime last week from the US on leadership. She's done TED Talk, leadership, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And she highlighted what she called protected characteristics or protected classes. And she cited these as usually race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, and religion. And she identified these protected classes as any characteristic shared by a group of people who are and who have been historically marginalized. And I wondered why ageism and why the social problem that I'm going to speak about was not listed, because it is a social problem that is yet to be acknowledged. And listening to her, it was blatantly evident, you know, that age and people who are in later life, in late adulthood, are a marginalized group in society in the main and in many other societies. It's not only relevant to our society, and they have been historically so. So, you know, the phrase fade to black comes to mind. But Maya Angelou once said, and this resonated with me so much, there is no agony like bearing an untold story inside you. And today, I want to share highlights of my story with you. We have a social problem in the world. We have a social problem, not only to our respective, not only in Ireland, not only in the UK, we have a social problem globally. One that we refuse to acknowledge, accept, or address. And that problem is the systematic warehousing of our citizens on the basis of their age and healthcare needs. That problem is our system of long-term care, where we put people in institutions or facilities to live out their final years and die. The discourse around aging, longevity, independent living, healthy aging do not actively include or address people who live in institutional settings. We talk in the main, when we talk about innovation, when we talk about healthy aging, when we talk about longevity, we tend to say that we want people to live independently in their own homes for longer. I've always had an issue with those last two words, for longer, because it implies that at some point your for longer will end and that you will go somewhere else. And that somewhere else is behind the iron curtain, as I call it. The foundation, oh dear, let me see, I'm trying to, okay. The foundation of this practice, the practice of putting people into facilities, into, you know, some people call them homes, warehouses. It's about putting people on the fringes of society. And this practice goes way back in the UK to 1834 with the advent of the Poor Laws, when the state recognized its responsibility to the sick, the poor, and the old. This practice started 1 year after slavery was abolished in the UK. As a society, we have come so far in terms of race, in terms of sexual orientation and gender equality. And we still have somewhere to go, but we've made huge strides and progress. However, there's a bastion, a final bastion of inequality in terms of age that remains largely unchanged, but more importantly, unchallenged. We have created a system of long-term institutionalized care characterized by unrelenting suffering of many, grateful acceptance by some, and huge profits for a few. Unrelenting pursuits of profits by a few. Many dedicated professionals have left the system because they were so shocked and disillusioned by the way it really works when you get under the hood. You most likely know very little of the underworld of which I speak, except through investigative television programs or the odd scandal that pops up in the media every few years. But do not think for one moment that what you saw were exceptions to the rule. They were not. It has been said that COVID-19 has lifted the lid on the issues with long-term institutional system of care in our country. I beg to differ, and I beg to differ greatly. COVID has thrown up some issues, yes, and these issues include things like infection control, policy practice, and the acquisition of personal protective equipment or PPE, issues with blanket, do not attempt cardiopulmonary resuscitation orders, issues with families, carers, and significant others accessing their loved ones, issues with the low pay and low social value of carers, issues with consent for testing and vaccination of staff, particularly those of Black African, Afro-Caribbean, and other ethnic minority groups. And that sort of contention between the priority for the NHS as opposed to the adult health and social care system. I would like to say that that was above the waterline. When you immerse yourself and you dive deeper beneath that waterline, these are entrenched historical problems that have plagued institutional long-term care for over 182 years. From its very inception, these mammoth challenges have grown despite the endless flow of white papers, green papers, reports, legislation, standards, training, technology, building design, trying to make it what, in my opinion, it cannot be. It is not fit for purpose. It remains unfit for the future, and in many, many instances does not uphold people's basic human rights, the rights of those who live in it and the rights of those who work in it. Just to pick out a few issues, modern day slavery, because now we have to go abroad and recruit more staff. A number of people are coming in from different countries, including Europe, the African continent, Philippines, the usual target groups for nurses. The stain of modern day slavery has now appeared on the fabric of our adult health and social care system. The issue of polypharmacy, which is the administration, systemic and routine administration of an individual administering more than 5 or more drugs to an individual, that's termed polypharmacy, and the challenges, the consequences of that remain with us. Poor working conditions and terms of employment, 0 hours contracts, that remains with us. Exploitation of people. I have worked with people with carers who are paid minimum basic living wage to perform a caring role, yet on a particular shift, they have to perform the caring role, they have to be housekeepers, they have to be cleaners, they have to perform the role of cooks, they have to prepare breakfast, all in one. So 4 or 5 different roles and being paid minimum wage for one. There is a culture of concealment that is so strong, and it's very, very difficult for the general public to get behind that screen unless you are in the system, or you work in the system, or you live in the system in many, many instances. Yeah, the culture of profiteering, that's That's it's you know, in many instances about profit. It's not about care. The individual is the product in this whole system. The industry is highly fragmented. There are over 22,000 facilities, healthcare facilities that have to be regulated, over 8,000 care homes, institutional facilities, and the regulator is stretched. So you generally have an inspection every 3 years, unless there's an incident where they might go in. So these institutions are left to their own devices for a 3-year period, and only 15 to 20% of that industry is you know, the large players in the industry that we know about. 80% of them are independent, single-run facilities. So we have issues. We have issues that continue to plague us, and we are yet to resolve. Despite the facade, many of us working in it are burdened, we are silenced, and we suffer the consequences of that. I want you to look into her eyes. You will not know her name, but I want you to know her name, because she has been forgotten in the main. But nurses like myself, we will never forget her. Her name is Jacinta Saldana. She was the mother of 2. She had a husband, she was an aunt, a daughter, and more importantly, she was a nurse. At the age of 46, she took her own life in December 2012. She was of Indian descent, and she worked at a hospital in the city of Westminster. She was found dead 3 days after falling victim to a prank by 2 Australian DJs. It might be coming back to you now, as part of a radio prank. She was found hanging with her wrist, with cuts to her wrist. She had transferred a telephone call, believing it to be from the Queen, to another nurse, who then had a conversation about the Duchess of Cambridge's medical condition. And this was broadcast by that radio in Australia. I will never forget Jacinta. I will never forget the pain and the hurt that I felt, because when the CEO of the trust spoke about her devotion to her duty and expressed condolences to her family, every single nurse in this country knew what she was experiencing in the underworld. I just want to say that Jacinta was not alone. These figures have been known since 2017, yet it took the horror of COVID for attention, and fleeting attention at that, to highlight the mental health impact of COVID-19 on doctors, nurses, and carers. It subsided to focus on the mental health and psychological impact of people who lived within the system. We have a fondness for positive news and positive stories. We turn away from reality and wicked problems because they're either too depressing or difficult. But this is the reality of healthcare professionals every single living day. The Financial Times in 2017 stated that the high risk of suicide among healthcare professionals could also be explained by these occupations possessing relevant knowledge on the methods of suicide. I leave that with you to digest. Some of the key factors include the culture of self-sacrifice that is prevalent in healthcare, being more concerned with the well-being of patients than of our own. Bullying. Although it might be difficult to envisage bullying within a caring profession, the truth is that the healthcare environment can be cutthroat at times. Bullying and harassment in adult health and social care is endemic and pervasive. Fears about speaking out can mean that we suffer in silence. I have suffered in silence for the last 4 years. I chose to speak out last month. I am buckling at the knees at this very moment with the consequences of speaking out. I have one question for you. Where are you? As service designers, as people who can change the world, as people who base their practice in human-centric approaches, ethnography, where are you? I fell in love with design and designers from way back when I started at Innovate in 2018, because I think designers across the board are the most creative, funky-ass people I have ever engaged with. My closest friends and allies are designers. I am pleased to call Patty Moore my big sister and to call George my awesome one. But where is service design? Where is the design revolution that we need? When product designers ask me for my opinion on textiles with sensors to detect heart problems and designing the hospital of the future or designing the new care homes, I find it very hard to quell my sense of disillusionment. Please don't turn away. Look beyond the staff management systems and organizational systems to for efficiency and effectiveness. Please look beyond the facade and do what you do really well, which is to create, which is to make life worth living, which is to bring joy and happiness to people. I await the day when the real design revolution is upon us, when my life and the people I work with and the people I serve are changed for the better. When we are freed from the yoke of fear, intimidation, gagging, and poor leadership. Open your eyes, look, listen, and find it within yourself to search for the truth. We need your help. We need you to help us make the system work the way it should, or at least much better. We need you to provide solutions to the very real, challenging, unpalatable, concealed, and intractable issues we face. We need your help to go places where others fear to tread. We need you to do something your future self will thank you for. We need you to work collaboratively with others to realize difficult social changes. We need you just to save our lives. It is time. We often magnify a few moments of smiles and happiness of a few and ignore the agony and destitution of many. We magnify the acceptance of a few and negate the choice of many. We reward the service of the many with platitudes and rhetoric, but ignore the multi-million-pound profit of the masters. COVID has forced us to open our eyes to new ways of doing things, new possibilities and new outcomes. How can we close our eyes? How can our eyes remain closed to the almost 30,000 people who lost their lives before their time and still not ask the question, is this right? Is this the way to go forward? Is this system worthy of our citizens? We're still not asking the questions, what if it was me? What if we had another pandemic in 20 to 25 years? Do human beings deserve to live and die in facilities, no matter how pretty they are, no matter how well designed and beautifully aesthetic they are? No government has been audacious enough to tackle this head on. Are you? What is your superpower? What is your cause? What is the change you would like to see in the world? I can answer that from my perspective. I believe that my superpower is my ability to influence and inspire, to touch people's hearts and minds. My cause is to stop people from being relegated to the fringes of society, dehumanized, and to simply eke out an existence because of their age, social needs, and/or medical condition. And the change I would like to see is that our generation and subsequent generations have real choice and alternatives other than institutions. I want to leave you with a simple request and a simple quote from Amanda Gorman. For there is light if only we are willing to see it. There is light if only we are brave enough. There's always light if only we are brave enough to see it. If only we are brave enough to be it. I ask you to shine your light on where it really matters. Task yourself, challenge yourself, be brave enough to look under the hood and just shine it anywhere. Anywhere that you can shine it will make a difference. Come rock our world. Come make a difference for us. Come save us. Jackie's Revolution is coming soon. If you want to hear more, I'd be more than happy to speak with you. Please do contact me. And these are my contact details. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Do you know, I have been to so many meetups over the last 10 years, and it's always the kind of good news and the best practice and the amazing case studies. And sometimes you actually just don't hear what's really needed because everything just seems amazing. And I don't know about all of you, but the last time I met Jackie and this time, I just feel more passionate about how design can make a change if we really, really look for it. So thank you so much, Jackie. It's always really emotive. And I would just encourage anyone who's here, maybe from public sector or voluntary community sector as well, to reach out to Jackie too, because she will be totally honest in those conversations, which is what we need as designers too. So thank you so much. And thank you so much to George as well for being with us today too. I don't think we could have got two better speakers for this evening to really start 2021 where we need to go further and need to go on. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I'm just going to hand over to Ronan to just maybe see if there's anything coming in the chat in terms of questions. Yeah, just hopefully there's one or two there that that you can answer. So Ronan.
Yeah, I'd like to thank both speakers. Jacqueline, I was fighting back tears throughout your speech. I've got an aunt who's a social worker who's been out a number of times on mental health issues because of bullying, so it really hit me pretty hard. Yeah, some of the questions I would say for Georgina, I'm still waiting on questions to come through for Jacqueline, but general surprise at the statistics for in terms of McKinsey, or the higher percentage of under 30s feeling lonelier than over 80s was a comment that came up quite a lot. John from our SDN group, this is again to Georgina. Are there some examples of services that have been created with older people in mind that proved better for everybody?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, please.
You know, I can't think of any.
Oh my goodness.
I can't think of any. I mean, and this is the problem. People talk about inclusive design. They talk about user-centered design, but really people aren't talking to real people. I mean, it is shocking. I mean, there are places like the National Innovation Centre for Aging in Newcastle who have started the Voice Network, which is now coming around all around the world, which is bringing older people with real life experience to feed into innovation. But it is incredible. No, it just doesn't happen. And it should happen. It should happen. Well, not should, it must happen.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. This is another one for Georgina. Quiva, again, our SDN group, I really want to dig into the common land method right now. Just a comment more than anything else, I think, but
give me a call. I mean, you know, we want people using it. So honestly, just get in touch. You know, this is, I mean, it's all the stuff that Jackie's talking about. This stuff is out there, but you know, it's how do we do something about it? How can we think differently about it? So this is, you know, I'm very much focused on how we can move away from just talking. You know, I mean, Jackie, we know this, don't we? People just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk around these issues, but it really is about doing. Now, I'm not saying that the common land method is perfect. It ain't, you know, it needs to evolve. But it is a start. It's a start about thinking things from a much more holistic perspective with every part of our humanity, our head, our heart, and our soul. So yeah, just anyone give me a call afterwards. I'd be really keen to sort of like to work with you and try things out.
That's very kind of you. And one more for you again, Georgina. Any tips on de-biasing our approach to work, especially qualitative research?
Qualitative, yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I think the first step that every single one of you should do when you leave this is go onto the Harvard unconscious bias test. So, you know, they do around a number of different kind of areas, but there is one around ageism. I would go and start looking yourself and see how ageist you are. I think you'd be absolutely surprised about it. I think also there's some really interesting stuff which has just come out from the World Health Authority and the UN, their first ageism report. I think go and explore. Actually, just start educating yourself. Start asking questions. I think, you know, the thing is, in terms of innovating in the age space, we are still so rooted in history. We really, really are. We need some fresh thinking, and I think part of that, like all of us, in terms of like gender issues, race issues, all of us have to take that responsibility to educate ourselves, and also be selfish about it. This is, as Jackie said, and as I've said, this is about your future self, your parents, where they're going to be, your grandparents, and your children. So actually, this is about your future. So yeah, take some responsibility. And it is incredible, because this is about, we can live longer, healthier, and happier lives. And you know, design can enable us, or design can disable us. And actually, as Jackie was, I mean, it is horrendous. And I know that with my mom, it's horrendous out there. You guys, design is eternally optimistic. Change the world. You can.
My apologies. I didn't realize that the question, there was a question for me here. Joshi, you answered. Sorry, I'm just thinking, oh my God. If I have any examples of designers in the countries who are doing a good job in aging. It all depends on what you call a good job in aging. That's very subjective. I know that there are countries, designers and institutions who are doing things differently, with some degree of success and some not. I know for a fact that there is a government policy drive taking place in the Netherlands, where people they're moving away from the institutional setting and taking people from residential care and putting them back into their own homes, their neighborhoods, and their communities. So I know there's a governmental policy shift to community and neighborhood care. So they are moving away from the institutional model. I know that at some point they actually had a quite dynamic sort of a way of using their nursing professionals, where we institutionalize ours and demand that ours work either in the NHS, in the public private healthcare system, or with agencies. They actually have independent nursing commercial practitioners. And I think if we have to change this institutional setting, we might have to think about deinstitutionalizing our healthcare professionals as well. I've worked with some wonderful designers, you know, from people from the design, from the RCA, the RSA, the chaps at Helen Hamlin Center, you know, the people at the Design Council and independent designers. And everybody has this drive, this passion to create life-changing products, services, and or systems. Somehow, I'm seeing very little change in my life, in the life of the people that I work with, even my family and friends. So I just think, you know, somewhere along the line, which is why I go back, I think there's this chasm is so great between reality, people's real problems, and how you identify the problem, how you innovate, and how you develop meaningful solutions. And I have this, you know, having worked at Innovate UK for all those years, 8 years, I say that innovation, that creativity is not the sole remit of industry or, you know, designers, the public. There are people out there who have real problems that affect thousands of other people, who have created solutions for themselves. They are not, you cannot put them in a competitive framework, which is the way we invest in innovation in the UK. Yeah, in a competitive framework. So I really think that, as I always say, aging is everybody's business. And there's business in it for everybody. Yeah. And my aim is that we all grow older without it costing us what it means to be human.
Sorry, Jackie, to cut you off. I just noticed that Patty is in the call, I think,
Oh.
and has her hand raised. So Patty, if you're there, have you got a question? I think it's Patty.
Yes, it is. I had to run off and get my tissues, of course. Sister Jackie loves seeing her elder sister cry. Ladies, wonderful job as always. Everybody, let me share a bit of hope. And I don't know if it's because I've been at this now for almost 5 decades, which I find heartbreaking, I must tell you, that we're still having this conversation after 5 decades of work. But I am happy to share things are getting done here in the States. I'm working with a remarkable generation of students coming into our fields, our collective fields. They are interested in being UX designers, user experience. They are interested in service design. And my corporate clients are all hiring a new Lord God Bufu that they refer to as a CDO, the Chief Design Officer. We're seeing cultural change rapidly occurring here. And I'm reflective on the fact that with the bad always is some good. The rose is beautiful to look at, but it has thorns. The pandemic has really been a Kickstarter here in the States. We are seeing our populace fed up with the lack of service that Jackie, you pointed out so beautifully. You painted a picture for us all. George, I'm sorry I missed you. I was at the doctor's, you know, they were taking more blood out of me. I had COVID in February and March of last year. And now I'm a candidate evidently for COPD, which doesn't exactly thrill me, but I lived through it. I'm grateful for it. I didn't have to be hospitalized, which of course, as we know in the early days was almost a death sentence. But I am pleased to say that the informative nature of this pandemic has changed the populace attitude here in the States. And I see a push from the streets up to the boardrooms, not other way around. And I think we're seeing it with Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and all of the social inequity issues that face us globally. We finally are hearing from the people, and the people are taking charge. I do have some exemplars that I'd like to point out. One, of course, here in the States, and I think every nation actually has a program like this, Meals on Wheels has been not just a way to provide nutrition for low-income elders here, but it's kept them socialized. It's given them hope that they're not alone. And the volunteers who are part of this network are doing an extraordinary job. What we found, however, wasn't just retirees or people with little time on their hand. Now we have the teens. You know, as soon as they get their driver's license, they're like, oh, I want to volunteer for Meals on Wheels. They join their aunties or their gran or, you know, their mom and dad going door to door. We're seeing faith-based, a charge of real humanism, a holistic humanism, where churches and synagogues and mosques and people of all faiths are coming together and doing community service. And so the people are teaching us how to get things done in the simplest of ways. And of course, I think we all agree, don't we, Jackie? It always starts with a smile. And that, you know, that global language of acceptance, of peace, of recognition is the starting point. We have to be more humanistic and holistic in our design. And we just have to push back on clients who tell us we don't design for those people. And if you know my career, you know that line well, because when I was at Raymond Loewy's offices in New York, as the only broad, and that's about the only non-X-rated term that they used for me that I can share with you. The broad also was the youngest at 20, spoke up often about the inequity of design. And gratefully, Mr. Lowy, who was already in his 80s, got a kick out of this wackadoodle Irish woman. And even though he was French, we got along fabulously. So change is coming, change is here. We are change. I'm grateful I was raised by my Irish gran who lived with us. She never told me to be somebody, but to be about others. And I think we're seeing that with this next generation of young designers. That's why I'm still getting out of bed in the morning. Didn't do hair and makeup for you, sorry. So I'm not at all depressed by this time. I'm energized by it. And I know when I have teammates like George and Jackie, we can do just about anything.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for popping in, Patty, as well. It's just amazing to have you here on the call. So we're close to past. I know that Sarah and Kiva have both been taking notes through the session. So I think that you guys have a Miro board to share if anyone does want to have a look at some of the things and themes that have come out today. And I also have recorded it. I just missed the start of yours, George, before I remembered that I should have recorded it just the very start. So I have the recording, so I will share, or we can upload somewhere and share it with everyone too, because I know some people had to drop off early there, but everyone was asking for the recording just to hear the end of your talk, Jackie, too. So from the Service Design Network, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who joined. Again, I know that this was the most glorious day of the year. So for those who are still sitting out in their gardens, thank you very much. And just to everyone, it's just great to see everyone here for the first meetup of this year. And we're just hoping to continue this theme throughout the year as well. So we'll be back in a couple of months with another meetup too. And before we close, or just when you're signing off, if you could just put something in the chat just about, you know, a wish you have or a reflection from the speakers, or something that you're going to take forward, you know, into the next year. I think that that would be amazing, just as a closeout in the chat. Unless the service design team here, have I forgotten anything at all? Was that everything? And yeah, just remember about John's survey as well, and we'll get that posted up on socials too. So big thank you again to everyone, and have an amazing evening and an amazing Easter.